toolbox. And for some of the people, they actually have a pretty good distribution now between the two rooms. But this ESL thing, you can actually lose that. This is good for anybody, in my opinion. That's so humble opinion. So anyway, without blabbing on more, it's all yours.
Well, thank you very much for inviting me here today. My name is Diane Hardy, and I work with Bow Valley College. And one of the initiatives that we've worked on in the last few years is to look at financial literacy and embed financial literacy in the programs that we offer, the tools that we're developing in order to support learners in developing financial literacy skills, but also thinking more critically about financial literacy. As Carl pointed out, the context that I work in is the area I work in is the English language learning department, and so our audience is primarily new immigrants, Canadian citizens who maybe have come to Canada that didn't necessarily move into a language study program right away because of workplace. So our audience is really definitely people who English is not their first language, and right across the continuum. So we work with learners who have very interested education, usually because of things like poverty, war, and as a result they have interactive numeracy skills, right through to learners who are very savvy, many years of education, but it's their first time in a Canadian context, maybe engaging in financial literacy. So what I'd like to do today is I'd like to give you a little bit of background information about where we came from, how we approach financial literacy, how we embed it within our program prior to taking you into the toolbox. I will show you the toolbox today, and I'll also share with you a network that is formed into an online community of practice. So if you are interested in financial literacy, language development, there's a resource for you online where you can engage with colleagues and peers within Alberta, across Canada, who are having similar types of conversations. And please feel free to ask questions at any point. If you would mind doing very loud, very expensive tools that my hearing. I thought I just had selective hearing with my husband, but I guess maybe not. So to start with, just quickly at your tables, I just heard, by yourself or with someone, why is financial literacy important? Why would it be, just describing my context and thinking about your context? Why would you think that financial literacy would be an important component of instruction, I guess, particularly for immigrants? Think about it or talk about it. Just going to share a couple of points of why I think that it's important. One was the truth of the financial that would be at the type of the literacy that we be also I think it's important that the person who's doing the research should share that information. That gives the others a better understanding of the financial situation. We like a very good way to teach financial assessment and the importance of it to others. Okay, so in our context, we started looking at financial literacy, and it was really through observation. And we found that for a lot of the people that we work with, their instructors are people that they trust, and we were finding that they were coming forward, or learners were coming forward, saying things that were funny, or we were observing things that were funny. And then we started to look at the research. And what we we saw was a bit staggering. Things like 50% of Canadians struggle with simple tasks involving math and numbers. And that a lot of our learners were already struggling financially. It was very difficult to make ends meet. And a lot of the decisions that they were making weren't actually helping them save money or make strides towards being, having that life that you talked about. When we started to look at it more closely, there is the federal government task force on financial literacy, and they define it as having the knowledge, skills, and confidence to make responsible financial decisions. So that's how what we started to look at when we thought of financial literacy, is that we wanted to help our learners to have the language, the essential skills, the literacy skills in order to make responsible financial decisions, or really, I think, more importantly, informed financial decisions. So after we started to look at financial literacy, and we recognized that there was a gap. We knew it was an issue. We knew it was a barrier for a number of learners as far as accessing education, as far as their quality of life. And so then we went to our learners, and we started to have some discussions with them. We had some focus groups with learners. Within the context of the toolbox, we worked a lot with immigrants. That was a group that we worked a lot with that informed this toolbox. However, because we have such a broad range of learners, we actually connected with our learners across our different program areas and asked them, why is money important? What kinds of things do you feel that you need to know in the Canadian context? And what they said to us is that really what it came down to is the value of financial literacy related to settlement, workplace, participation, and success. So for a lot of our learners, in order to buy a home, manage their finances, support their children with their education, it really came down to understanding how to settle within Calgary and within Alberta. They found in workplace to make informed decisions about the job, the amount that they were paid, how they would save money, what would they put their money into, how would they invest. Participation was a big one. Financial literacy, in order for people to support their children, to engage in things like sports, to save for their children's education, to invest in their own education, and then ultimately they saw it as a sign of quality of life around financial literacy. So we looked at what our learners talked about. We looked at the research, and one of the key aspects around financial literacy that we focus on is goal setting. And I think it's important to do goal setting because individuals will set different personal goals. They have different reasons. They're at different points of the continuum. So depending on what skills they need to work on, the goal setting was an opportunity for us to engage in dialogue, but then also to help them know that they were making progress. So in all the groups that we work with, from very low to very instructed education, through to students with lots of education, lots of work experience, we talk a lot about goal setting. And we talk about it in short-term goals as well as long-term goals. So the short-term goals are some of the things that they need to do in order to either learn about financial literacy, apply financial literacy, so short-term learning goals, but also long-term goals, the things that will help them to have a better quality of life. So in a lot of the resources that you'll see actually in the toolbox itself, we focus quite a bit on goal setting. And we do it in steps. So often it starts in the classroom with goal setting in the classroom, and then helping them to goal set for when they leave us or when they venture the workforce. So in our department, as I said to you, the experience and the range of understanding around numeracy, financial literacy varies considerably. And it's a bit of a daunting task because we're trying to embed financial literacy and recognize the difference in the skills and abilities that learners have. So just to give you a bit of a profile, we have programs, and this is a fictional composite profile. So we have learners, for example, like learner A, And they rely on, they'll go shopping, they have money, but they actually rely on someone to take money from their purse. They're relying on someone to make change for them. But in some cases, you know, it's difficult to count in English. They can count in another language, and have difficulty adding and subtracting two-digit numbers. We have learners like Learner B, who will say that they've been taught math a very long time ago. They don't necessarily articulate mathematical processes, often because language is a barrier, not because they don't know. They would do it probably in first language. But they can show you on pen and paper quite easily that they can add and subtract. And they'll know tables by rote. They're fairly functional. They use their debit cards for everything. But what they don't maybe do is look at the best plan for what type of debit card they should have or what kind of account that they've opened. So they use their debit card all the time, but it turns out they only have 10 free transactions per month. And then there's Learner C, who's quite confident and confident mathematician. They can do circles around me, but they'll struggle to make ends meet. And sometimes decisions that they make is they'll be buying food a lot in the cafeteria instead of bringing lunch from home. They'll buy food in the cafeteria. They often have credit cards. They have a fair amount of debt, and they often will make things like minimum payments every month. So it's a real range of complexity, and I think, you know, when we looked at the different learners and we looked at financial literacy, we really realized that financial literacy is complex. It's not just about the concept of financial literacy. We had to look at their literacy skills, their numeracy skills, their understanding of financial literacy, their understanding of the Canadian context, their use of banking or banks themselves. So what it came down to is that with language literacy and numeracy gaps, our approach was really we made no assumptions. And there may be no correlation. So someone who has fairly high language indicates they have many years of education, or I won't say many, but maybe past grade 10, may not actually have strong numeracy skills. Sometimes someone with very low language will have very exceptional numeracy skills. It's not a numeracy gap, it's a language gap. So when we approach financial literacy, we really have tried to look at different facets within our programs that can support people to become more financially literate. So we look at language and support language instruction. We embed numeracy to make sure that they have the skills that they need in order to make informed decisions. And then we look at financial literacy in broader context from the perspective of saving money, renting homes, getting credit cards. So one of the fundamental things that we do, I think, in our program is we teach numeracy exclusively. So we really embedded numeracy, particularly in our programs where students have interrupted formal education. So if there are people who are working with literacy learners or ESL literacy learners, we have embedded numeracy in order to try and close the gap. And we really focus primarily on numbers and operations, patterns and data, and geometry and measurement. And those really come from some of the needs, whether it was identified through some of the work that they're doing, so skills they need at work, skills that they need within the community, and then skills that we think they need in order to build financial literacy skills. And I think two other things that make it definitely unique to our demographic, but I think a best practice for all, is that we really focus on the development of English mathematical language. So it's very difficult for people to engage in conversations if you don't think about context. So for them to walk into a bank and talk about applying for a credit card or applying for a mortgage, they need the language in order to be equipped to have a conversation and then to make informed decisions. We also put a lot of focus into document use, problem solving, and computer use. We talk a lot about digital literacy, so they get a lot of information from the computer. They fill in a lot of forms electronically. There's lots of process pieces that they find online. So a lot of what we're also embedding, is forms, reading graphs, tables, charts. We do lots of problem solving, and like I said, we try to make sure that they have improved computing as well. So a couple of things just around our approach, and we'll move into this a lot, but we started with a show me what you know approach. And this is really to get rid of our assumptions that we may make about what we think their numeracy skills are or what we expect their financial literacy knowledge to be. So the show me what you know approach is really having learners demonstrate their knowledge of numeracy, their understanding of credit, and we often use reality hour visuals whenever possible in brainstorming. In that brainstorming, we also pull out or elicit a lot of the vocabulary that they are searching for or that they themselves are using. Which leads us into we maintain a very strong focus on vocabulary development. And what we really want them to do is critical thinking. So we want them to be able to explain their reasoning and their decisions. We want them to understand what's being asked of them. So we do a lot with word problems, problem-solving tasks. And we try to recycle the vocabulary frequently to ensure that it becomes familiar and understood. So if you're someone who's in a link program, or you do working more in settlement, we look at the different types of themes that you may be introducing to learners as they settle in a community, and then we try to find ways to infuse or embed the numeracy as well as the financial literacy competencies within those themes. We do what we call small group problem solving. So in our program, we spend in approximately 4 hours a week that focuses primarily on numeracy instruction. In higher levels, it would be financial literacy. And really what we do is we often do small group problem solving, and it's multi-level. So we put groups together. It gives them an opportunity to collaborate, debate, and actually use the numeracy skills. So it's an application of numeracy as well as language. And we spend a lot of time creating word problems that contain real-life scenarios. So we won't disclose any scenarios that our learners, that are personal learners going through, but we know that there's some trends. So, for example, they'll sign up for a credit card, but they don't maybe haven't read the small print, or they don't understand the interest rate. Cell phones are a big issue. They get a free cell phone because they haven't read the 3-year plan that goes along with the cell phone. So we try to pull up scenarios that our students encounter all the time, these real-life scenarios, and have them work in groups to try and solve the problem or identify what numeracy skills they need, what language skills they need in order to solve the problem.
How about negotiating with cell phone companies?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Negotiation is a big one. A lot of our learners, one of the things we found is particularly in the youth program, they get a lot of traffic tickets or violations, and if you can negotiate it, you can also bring them down. So the fines come down, but they need some skills of how to negotiate that. So we, because of the difference in numeracy skills, we have found that most of the groups are quite multi-level. So it's difficult to grade homogeneous groups of the language. There might be a similarity in the language skills, but their numeracy skills are quite different. However, we found that the group problem solving can work quite effectively, that different people will bring different experiences to the table. And for higher levels, what we really do is we encourage them to defend their decisions, to question and challenge the rationale of other people, which really gives them the opportunity to use the vocabulary and again demonstrate the numeracy knowledge. We've also worked to try and create a numeracy-rich environment. So I guess, same with literacy, if you print materials on the wall, we do a lot to have numeracy available to their calculators. There's a lot of reality. If we're talking about money, we try and bring in money, real money that they can look and see. And wherever possible, they'll be manipulative. So not always just explaining with language, but again, showing them what they know. So after embedding this into the curriculum and really looking at numeracy, what we started to see is observations that look more like this. So in the first set of observations, we saw things like students throwing pennies in a garbage can. Some of the observations that we were noticing from instructors were actually students sort of having an aha moment like, oh, I can make a change, or I can, there's things that I can do that will change the way I approach financial literacy. So in this situation, there was a person who was spending, $15 to $20 on food outside of the home. And in Calgary, $15 to $20 a week, it's not hard to do. It may not be, that you're buying food every day, but when the student actually started to look at what $15 to $20 meant to her, on a weekly basis, what we found is that the ownership, or it was basically putting it into the hands of the learners to increase their awareness of financial literacy and the need to understand financial literacy, and to think about how they spend their money. And interestingly, in the research that we did, it indicated that a lot of Canadians don't actually take a lot of training on financial literacy, like across the board, not just immigrants, but they're not actually accessing training on financial literacy. So, it's probably not that shocking. I think budgeting has more to do with age and more experience. But, probably not surprising that the average person who's probably spending more on coffee. I know Starbucks is my vice. I just maybe stop going to Starbucks so often. So what we did is, after really looking at some of the challenges that our learners face, taking a look at the content and the skills that we needed to address, we pulled together a group of our instructors. The majority of the instructors involved in this toolbox do work with learners interested in formal education. But I do believe that what they've created actually has very broad applicability. So if you're not working with learners who have gaps in literacy, gaps in numeracy, what you'll probably find is some of the background information you won't have to spend as long on. It won't take you as long to set up the opportunities to address financial literacy. If you are working with students with interested education, what you'll find is that you really need to do small steps, and you need to scaffold the instruction so that not only are you focusing on the language and the numeracy, but you're also talking about some of the concepts behind it as well. So a group of instructors came together, and we got money from the Alberta government to create a resource that we could put online that we would share. The resource primarily focuses on Alberta. I will say it probably has a bit more to fun to Calgary, because that's where our home base is. And what they did is, based on the work they've done, they put it in a progression that they feel that they would teach it in. So they start with money as the first theme, the first part of it, and they move to household expenditures, grocery shopping, budgeting, banking, goal setting, credit cards, debt, loans, savings, fraud, and we're now currently working on 3 new categories, which is work, government, and starting a business. We included government because often for our learners, income tax returns are really important. In order to show financial needs, you need to complete an income tax return, and systems are important. So how you navigate the post-secondary system, or how you access financial support, say for post-secondary. So government is the piece that we've included just to sort of emphasize systems. What we've also done in the toolbox is we've provided some background information. We've talked about some guiding principles if you are going to start with numeracy, or if numeracy is an important piece. We have assessments, so if you don't know your learner's numeracy skills, based on the outcomes that we've set, there's assessment tools, there's 3 different assessment tools where you can get a sense of where they would place in their numeracy skills as well as their language skills. And then there's some further reading, so if you're interested in financial literacy or some of the things that are happening within the Canadian context, that you can access some additional reading as well. So when you go into the toolbox, looks like another page, so I'm not even sure if I'm there, but I am. So I just want to show you quickly what we've done. So this is money, and the first thing that we started with to sort of support you in your planning is a driving question. So a driving question that might help you sort of consider to contextualize the lesson. And then we've included in this is the suggestion of literacy content. And we've included things like the numeracy outcomes that you might want to consider if numeracy is a component. And then we've also included resources and community services. So if there's additional resources that we feel will be of benefit, and it certainly isn't exhaustive, there'll be other resources that you may be using that are equally as good, but these are just resources that our instructors have tried with the learners in our program, as well as the community services. And our goal with financial literacy really is to connect them to the resources and services that they need in order to make informed decisions. So in our context, what we're trying to do in our program is just give them the opportunity to practice skills, use the language, learn about what services are available to them so that then they can go and access services outside of our program area. The other thing that we've done in the toolbox is we talked a lot about what would be the most beneficial things, what would practitioners benefit from the most. And because everybody's context is different, we decided not to make a series of resources. But we tried to create a resource that could do a couple of things for you. One, if you wanted a curriculum that was progressive, so you kind of knew where to start, how to carry it through, this resource could help you to design curriculum at more progressive curriculum. If you're someone who doesn't really want to focus on embedding numeracy and financial literacy in everything that you do, if there's certain topics or touch points or concerns that your learners have, you should be able to come into the toolbox and find some ideas of how you could address it. So for example, fraud. You could come in and talk about fraud, you could find access to resources about fraud without necessarily having to take such a comprehensive approach to embedding financial literacy and numeracy. And what we did is we tried to come up with exemplars. So in our case, because a lot of our learners do have have interest in education, what we did is we actually looked at the literacy documents from the Canadian Language Benchmark, so ESL for literacy learners. And they have broken down literacy into smaller stages so that you can present information and evaluate information in more discrete steps. And what we did is we developed exemplar lesson plans so that if you have somebody who has some reasonable literacy skills, what you could do is you could come in and if money was what you were focusing on. There's a lesson plan here that talks about the vocabulary you might want to consider. It talks about outcomes that you might want to address. It gives you introduction to the lesson itself, kind of walks you through a lesson plan, and then it provides you with some sample resources. And ideally, these sample resources are examples, but we've also given you links so that you can use real application forms or different resources that would pertain to money. We also talk a lot about using, where possible, just real examples, so that it's not always paper-based, but that you're bringing real examples into the classroom. So depending on the level that you're teaching, you'll find resources that are across stages or across the literacy continuum, examples of lesson plans, and then examples of activities or things that can support you. And I'll show you some examples of things that we've done in our program where we've pulled things from the toolbox. So let me just go back to So one of the things that within the toolbox that you'll also find is that we do encourage you to make this relevant to the community that they live in or the community that you live in, to make it things that are really meaningful so they can see application. So our focus really is on the transferability of skills. So one of the things that we'll do, and this is looking at money and budgeting, we've done things like the trips to the discount store. We'll talk about meal planning. That's where the example came, the person spending $15 to $20 per week. In the grocery store and convenience store, so we'll talk about things like coupons. We'll talk about things, how to round up, how to round down, making decisions between what's more cost effective. Someone who's not just focused on sale, but how they do the power rules. We talk about shopping from flyers so that they do comparison shopping. We do a lot of work with helping them to use software programs that will support them, so for example, technology, calculators. We do a lot of budgeting in Microsoft Excel, so that sometimes if they may not, there's difficulty in some of the numeracy skills, but they know there's tools that will support them. And we do a lot with class surveys, which we change into graphs or tables, so that they're actually reading graphs or tables, but about the information that pertains to their classmates or to a topic of interest based on what they've decided. So here's a word problem. So we do a lot of word problems. And I want you to just take a look at this word problem and imagine that you're working with a group of people who have maybe, well, we'll say they're second language learners. And let's say, you know, they have lower numeracy skills. What would you do to help them tackle this word problem? What are some of the strategies, or what comes to mind of how you would approach, how you would introduce this type of word problem, and what are some of the strategies that would help them?
They have to decide what's essential to solving the problem and which numbers are not.
Right.
Like, it doesn't matter that she's born on whatever language, which one was, they need to think of that.
Yeah, exactly. That's a very good point. You really need to know what it is you're trying to solve. Any other thoughts?
Information is given.
So information. And so one of the things that we do with in our class is we often give out highlighters or colored pens or things for them to work with in groups. This would be an example. They wouldn't do it independently. They would be with a group of people and they would talk about the problem. And so a couple of things that we would do is we color code. So we would know that there's 5 students in class. Susan happens to be an instructor in our program. And then they have to group ideas together. And there's another 3 learners in Dawn's class. Then we'll take another highlighter and we'll look at what's some of the vocabulary that you may not understand. And so things like chipped in, that's really difficult. What does chipped in mean? An equal amount of money, equal amount. So we found things like often learners will know one word. That's, for example, with addition, they might know the word add, but they may not realize that plus. There's other words, other synonyms that mean the same thing. So we'll look at the different words. We know that the present costs $56, and what we need to figure out is how much the students contribute. And so they need to know that the students contribute an equal amount. So this is the part when I was saying we'll talk a lot about defend your decision, the rationale. We'll actually have them talk about it. We won't jump right into solving it. We won't jump right into the numeracy component. We'll actually look at the words themselves and pull them apart. Particularly for learners with language, where language is the barrier, it's often not the actual how you find out the answer. It has much more to do with the way the problem's been worded and their familiarity with that. And so what we do with these types of problems is really what we find is it builds their knowledge of mathematical language. And not only do they see it, but they're actually starting to use it. So they're using it in the problem solving that they're doing in class. We also do things like internet scavenger hunts. So we'll talk about things like finding information on the net, what's your credible source. There's lots of rich dialogue around that. And then we'll give them different types of activities to do, and depending on the group of learners, the activities will become more complex, or depending on how much they've gone through the process. So the last one, there's actually more work involved. There's actually more work involved in them finding the answer than just going to the internet. They're actually using, they have to form an operation. Just another example of scavenger hunt things that we'll do, and then how we'll use numeracy to pull real information. And one of the things with this scavenger hunt, this actually happens to be really content specific. This has to do with what they were studying in class. So it's just to show you an example of how you can easily change up the context to make it relevant to what it is that you're teaching or what it is that you're addressing. What we find is it actually makes them really think about math and think about the applications of math. And doing problems like this, what we've noticed or what's been communicated back to us is that they're actually applying it in different contexts. So they're starting to do more or apply it more in the workplace or apply it more in daily life. The other thing that we've done is we actually work a lot with graphs and we have them pull the information together, pull the graphs together, and then use this information to improve their computer use skills. And then what we'll do is take the graphs that they've made and we'll embed them into word problems, or we'll embed them into tasks, so that they actually, it's not that they're getting brand new information, it's just that they have to interpret the information differently. So we're scaffolding the lessons so they've been introduced to the vocabulary. They're talking about things that are meaningful and relevant to them. In this case, it was a comment about working in groups, because the students didn't understand in math why they had to do so much group work, why they couldn't solve it by themselves. So this was a task to help them understand, or to talk about different perceptions around group work. But we changed the content here and inserted it into many tasks, and I think you can see how you could scaffold the lesson, and you can take things where they have the stronger numeracy skills and really make it more about language or the interpretation of information. The other thing that we've embedded in the program, which has worked really well, is student mentors. So we actually have students working with each other to develop financial literacy skills. And I think for our learners, it's very interesting because they come from different backgrounds, but a lot of them have similar experiences or similar challenges. So when they come together and they can talk about something in common, they actually help each other problem solve. Actually, they're quite resourceful in how they problem solve. So we often do things where students will mentor other learners in the program to support each other with financial literacy. The instructors in our program said that I should share some resources, so I thought I would also share that when we look at when you go into the financial literacy toolbox, there's a list of resources that you can use as well. But this is something, resources that we've used within our program, also noted on the toolbox. And Easy Money is actually a reader that our students sign out and are reading. So the other thing, when they do goal setting, we talk to them about what kind of information should you access, where can you go to access information. They don't always give them all the answers. They need to find some of the answers. So this is something where it's a fairly reasonable reading level, like they can manage the reading level, and it's done in a way that's manageable chunks. I'm going to post this, so this is also in your handout, but these are just some examples of resources that you can go to online. So these are in your handout that you can definitely take a look at. And then what I'd also like to share with you today, and I will welcome certain questions. The other resource that we have that I think is somewhat of a unique opportunity, if you are working on supporting learners with literacy skills and literacy development, if you are focusing on numeracy instruction, if you are having conversations about financial literacy, is tied to the Financial Literacy Toolbox. There's a resource called the ESL Literacy Network. Are any of you familiar with it? Okay. What the ESL Literacy Network is, and you'll see that you'll notice the same with the toolbox, is it's really designed for practitioners. It's not a resource for learners to go to. They're both resources designed to support you working with learners. And in the financial literacy, in the toolbox or in the network, what we found is that lots of people are having conversations about financial literacy. There's lots of conversations about how we can better support our learners in closing some of the gaps, or literacy gaps or numeracy gaps, and that people are looking for ways to connect with one another, to pose questions, to share resources, to share ideas. So when you go into the financial literacy toolbox, that resource is really us sharing information with you. So it's us sharing things that we've tried in our classrooms, that have worked in our classrooms. The network is more about us sort of providing opportunities for us to come together, particularly here in Alberta. That was our primary focus, where we can have conversations and connect each other to resources. So on the network, we focus on many different topics, but a hot topic and a topic that comes up quite often is financial literacy. So we have months, like November, the month of November, dedicated to financial literacy, where we encourage people to come in and share resources, talk about what's happening in different programs in Alberta. And the way that people can do it is we have blogs. So you can come in and there's blog postings. So there might be, usually you're connected to an instructor at Bow Valley College who's working with financial literacy. And the instructor will often lead the conversation and encourage you to sort of share your ideas, or they'll introduce you to a resource that we're using. Or it's an opportunity for you to come in and pose a question or share a resource that's effective. And then the other component of it, and I'll actually take you into the toolbox, is we have what we call showcase items. So in this case, it's things that have been tried and true that really look at the application. So for this one, it was beginning budgeting and Microsoft Excel. So one of our instructors uses Excel a lot, and she's had lots of questions that say, I don't know, I think Excel may be too difficult. I don't know that I feel comfortable teaching it, or that our students will be comfortable using it. So what she did is created a showcase item. There's a video that you can watch. It sort of walks you through a process. Just to show you ways how she's embedded things like Excel into her class and the results that she's seeing from using it. So when you come into the network, and if you move in, if you go into let me just back up here. All right. The Financial Literacy Toolbox is actually a part of the network. So when you come into the network, there's a place called Community, and within Community, there's all kinds of things, all kinds of ways for you to dialogue with other people in Alberta, across Canada actually. So we don't just focus on financial literacy, there's also reading, writing, digital literacy. But if you come into the blog, which I just want to show you, and if you are interested in financial literacy, you can go into the cloud. What you can do is you can come in to sort of see the discussions that we've had around financial literacy. So there's different things where people have come in and they talk about planning on the dotted line. This is the ideas of terms and contracts and some of the challenges that learners encounter. There's discussions around credit cards, introducing banks, carrying cash. So these are things that our instructors see as challenges for their learners, and have created resources or materials. And often what they'll do is they'll connect you to resources that they've used or links that have supported them. And then there's also something in the network where if you go into what we call Showcase, in the Showcase area, what instructors have done is they've actually talked about a lesson, or they've talked about how they've used the financial literacy toolbox. So let's say, for example, going back to money, if you were curious about how someone's used the lesson plans or the resources, you could come in to see if they posted a showcase item. And we look at different types of literacy programs that you can target it by age. You can target it by type of program that you're involved in. You can also target it by category. In this case, if we said numeracy, you can see the different showcase items that have been posted by instructors who are focusing on numeracy or financial literacy. So beginning budgeting in Microsoft Excel, that was one of the blogs that I'm showing you or that was posted. You can actually come into this and see some of the material.
Great.
So it talks about what the instructor did, the rationale behind it. Sometimes you'll find videos that are posted. We talk about how it was carried out, and then the reflection. And the Microsoft Excel, the example that I showed you about the project work, tied into the same instructor who sort of showed us ways that we could embed Excel. And so what we think with learners, going back to the goal setting, is a lot of what we're doing is really put into the classroom, but we're also finding that learners are seeing ways to transfer it into their work. We've had comments about learners who, they've been able to demonstrate skills that they didn't demonstrate before, and as a result, they have been asked to do a different type of job, they've received promotion, they're actually getting more engaged in the process of reading their paychecks, understanding how they're using money. So when you come into the network, what you'll find is that this is the opportunity to connect with instructors at Bow Valley College and to share resources or to share things that you're doing within your organization. But more importantly, just to dialogue, just to make sure that we are sharing our ideas. And the last thing that I would just show you in this as well, and this is another way to find the toolbox, is if we have a toolbox, so you can access the literacy, you can access our toolbox, but what we've also done is we've connected, so if you look at numeracy as an example, you can also see other types of resources that are available. And what I would suggest to you is it's certainly not exhaustive, so we're always, if there's resources that you know of or you think that should be shared on the network, you can definitely let us know, and we could happily create links to your institutions or to the resources that you've created. But I think one of the really interesting things that I would say from my perspective from the network is it's really helped us to connect to have a better understanding of what the needs of learners are, and then a better understanding of how we can support instructors embedding financial literacy and numeracy within their instruction itself. And then one other thing I'll show you, because I think it might be of interest, is within the community. So the community is another place that you can go, and one of the things that we do is we host workshops. And a lot of our workshops now are webinars. So if we have webinars that are upcoming that are often tied either to literacy or financial literacy, we don't have a current workshop right now, but if there are workshops that are coming up, you can certainly come in and sign up for them. So there's been a number of different things. So the financial literacy toolbox, we did a presentation in November and February, I guess. But I think the toolbox, if you go through the financial literacy toolbox first, if financial literacy is the area of focus, what you'll find is a whole bunch of lessons and resources that you can use. And then if you're interested in sort of extending that knowledge and looking at ways to apply it, if you go into the ESL Literacy Network, I think what you can find is that you can connect to a community of practice. Any questions about the resources or anything you'd like to see more closely?
Are your webinars recorded so people can access them?
Yes. Depending on the approach, some of our webinars have been a 4-series webinar, and we've kept it close to participants when they share resources. But anything that's like a 1 hour, 1.5 hours, absolutely.
How many staff do you have for your ESL team? Like, is it just one you do, or to manage the website?
We actually have a fairly, like, our ESL team is quite large. So we have probably approximately 38, I would say, we have 38 continuous positions and maybe approximately, I don't know, maybe 70 the network itself is actually a very small group. So we have one person who looks after the network and the toolbox. However, the network and the toolbox really is a reflection of the collective expertise of the department. There are many staff who have shared and posted resources, and they've been quite committed to sharing the resources. So what we'll do is anything that's posted is something that we've tried or piloted with our learners. So when you go into the financial literacy toolbox, the lesson plans have been piloted by 2 to 3 instructors, usually at different levels. And the resources are ones that the instructors have said they found useful. Same with the community connections. Anything that we posted it because people have told us that it's worked with them in the classroom. Certainly not to say it's exhaustive. And then probably about once a year, we'll have people go through and add to the collection. Financial literacy is a topic that we probably focus on at least 2 times a year. As far as within our community, we often find that we're posting resources.
I have a question from online as well. They're wondering for like an intro level course for financial literacy for learners, about how many sort of course hours over what kind of time period you would be looking at.
The way that we've approached it, we have not developed a formalized course that just focuses on financial literacy, but our terms are approximately 15 weeks, and we do anywhere from 2 to 4 hours a week that will focus with direct explicit instruction around the numeracy skills, the language skills, and financial literacy. And what we've done, what I would say is in the financial literacy toolbox, which I'll go back to, we have tried to put it in ways or organize it in a way that's accessible. Organize it in ways that's accessible, so if you wanted to do smaller chunks or you wanted to group ideas together, as I said to you, we reorganized it in a way that this is the way that we would introduce it to learners. So starting really with personal and moving into more abstract or things that involve more content. And certainly, one thing that I would encourage you to do is if you have questions or if there's something around financial literacy or numeracy that you're considering tackling, if you go to the network within the community, you may not want to post a blog, but you can send us an email. So you can contact us if you have a question. We do look at frequently asked questions, and that also informs sort of how we update the site or what kinds of things, what we'll ask, like we'll invite guest bloggers in, going back to your question. So our staff will guest blog, or sometimes if we're connected to a partner that's an expert, they'll come in and do some guest blogging as well. And if there's certain things that people are really interested in or the community wants information about, if we can help to support you in that context, we certainly will.
Can't your resources available on your website different from the resources that is available on the CCFL website, which is becoming the center for financial literacy?
What I would say is in our website, hopefully there would be some similarities. I would say that ours is not as exhaustive. And what I would say is what we've done is we've, I think, looked to other areas and we've adapted it to sort of support the needs of the learners that we're working with. So where possible, because we're not the financial literacy experts, we're pulling to other resources to inform. And we're certainly not recommending changes to other resources. But what we've done is try to find ways so you could scaffold it, so you could prepare them to access those types of resources. So for example, let's say some of our learners, many of our learners might need to access different types of community support, and it involves sometimes completing tax returns, filling out application forms. What we try to do is look at what they need or the skills they need, scaffold it, so kind of break it down into the smaller steps, so they can actually go and fill in that application form or access that website. So what we really try to do, and I think where our site is different, is very much so there's a focus on language. And it says assumptions, don't assume, because they may have higher listening and speaking skills, to that they understand all the terminology. So we really focus in and pull out the terminology. We try to give you ideas of, within each of these. We try to build your toolbox. So if you're approaching numeracy, some of the resources that you might want to have within your organization or within your classroom, so that students have makes it more accessible to them. Does that answer? Yeah. And I certainly would say to you that when it comes to financial literacy, I think this is one place to come to, but not the only place to come to. And certainly for more in-depth financial literacy, there's organizations that really focus on financial literacy that our instructors would go to and we would refer our learners to. This is really more of a toolbox to help practitioners look at financial literacy and numeracy embedded in your instruction, and this is an example of how we've approached it. So only one way of doing it. We have had good feedback though, and one of the things that I would say as well is that because we've done a lot with multi-level, I think within it, if you have time to look through the resource and you have some time to sort of look at the background, you'll probably find that there's some good strategies if you do have multi-level learners in the class, whether it be language or numeracy or around concepts of how you can manage or support a multi-level class. Any other questions about the resource or anything you'd like to see in your resource?
I just want to make a comment. I love the icons. It looks inviting and easy to interpret right away.
Thank you. Yeah, one of the things that I hope you'll see in the next year is we'd like to make it a bit more dynamic, and we'd like to make so that when you come into it, you'll probably find that there'll be more different types of assets, so like videos that they can listen to, ways to pull out different types of skills, so it's not just pen and paper. When you look at the activities, if you spend some time in it, it may look like it's pen and paper, but a lot of it, students like to, like it's manipulative and you can move things around, like even with the word problems, there's a lot of tasks in there that kind of give you ideas of how you could approach an activity, so it's not just pen and paper based, but use of games or different ways that you can engage them in the content.
Can you use the literacy phases to the correlation from the benchmark?
We've really looked at, as far as correlation, we really refer to the CCLB, so I would say it's probably about up to a benchmark 5. However, in our case, a lot of our learners listening and speaking skills are quite strong. So they're higher listening, speaking, maybe a bit lower in reading and writing, particularly in our youth program. It does vary. And I would also say that a lot of the concepts, like when you start talking about credit debts and loans, fraud, it's actually quite high level. So we tried to give some examples of how you can make it a bit more manageable. But we would always encourage it to use documents. Use the actual document, and then what we would use scaffold. We're trying to support you so that you can scaffold a lesson, do some of the free teaching so that they can engage or use the actual, use that document. And like I said, our goal really is about transferable skills. So the hope is that what they're seeing in the classroom, so like we're linking them to sites that they can use outside of the classroom. We're bringing in materials that, they had tax returns or something like that. Or we're bringing in partners who would do presentations that would support it. So what they're actually accessing is really very much the same as what you or I would access. I think the other thing just to point out too is there was a lot of talk about assessment. So in our area when we first started, the language piece was easier. Components of essential skills were easier for us to assess. But when it really came to numeracy and knowing what it was that we wanted to assess, we put some thought into that. It's certainly not exhaustive, but if you do look at the assessments, it will give you a sense that they have foundational numeracy skills in order to inform whether or not you need to start with some of the numeracy instruction if you're really moving in more to the language and financial literacy that is more of an application of the numeracy content. And then, as I said, if you go through each of these, we try to do it in such a way or divide it in such a way that you could create a more progressive curriculum. So if you wanted to focus on credit, debt, and loans, that was for your area of focus, what you could sort of do it along. I'm sorry. You know what? We have yeah. And one of the things that I would say is that I think that's a good point, and that's some of the feedback. So when we talk about savings, we try to broaden it a little bit so it's not just savings accounts. And when starting a business, some of them started in small businesses, or some of the things I think where you start to see some of the financial literacy concepts. When our context when we started this really was the context of we were working with learners to try to access the workforce and settle in Canada for a lot of immigrants. So these topics really came out of some of the need to settle and get engaged in the community. And when we started, we were very much interested in the idea of civic engagement. And we thought, we know where research shows that, they're participating in things like this, civic engagement. But yeah, as we do this more and get a little bit better at it, I think you'll start to see some additions on the site as well.
Do you cover insurance?
We've actually talked a lot about insurance. We haven't done an exhaustive analysis of it. Where insurance comes up the most and probably isn't represented on the network is we have a lot of discussions around driving and insurance tied to driving.
Well, driving without their insurance.
Yeah.
Trying to negotiate a house with no mortgage and stuff like that.
Or even for simple, like, renting and having renter's insurance. I think that's really important.
Yes.
Yeah. That'd be a nice addition.
Yes. And actually, it's something, if it's something you are doing, we do a lot. When we do our scenarios with learners, that comes up quite often. It's often around, well, it is tenants and we agree the debt, the deposit, what they're entitled to at the end, what kind of insurance they need as far as homes. Yeah.
Like a lot of our learners don't have homes that they're renting, and yes, they don't have insurance.
Yeah, and there's fires and floods, and then they lose everything.
Absolutely. Yeah. So I see your question here. Do you have to be a math teacher to use these resources? I would think that more importantly, and I don't know, you can answer it, but around these issues, there's more that knowledge, that some of that basic stuff about renting insurance and driving insurance and that kind of stuff versus just knowing math, right? Or, a combination of that.
And I think one of the really interesting learning curves for us was, from an instructor perspective, was actually, when people, like when it was in our institution, we often thought about being a language expert. And then all of a sudden, there's these complexities in life which let us, that we need to understand essential skills. We need to have information, the same information. And, again, I think in the beginning we made assumptions that maybe we have it. And there isn't necessarily a correlation that suggests that we've done a lot with financial literacy training or that we have all of that background knowledge. So it actually really has changed the way we approach our lessons. It changes the way that we've had to plan for our lessons.
I think more so in rural communities. Where even your ESL experts, who is that, and where do you find them? In the rural community. So nobody or somebody with these skills is better than nobody, and that's definitely where we're at.
Yeah. And definitely, even we started with the math because a lot of people were like, well, math isn't my background, and some of what we're doing. Well, in particular, a lot of our learners are better at math than we are. And that can be pretty intimidating when you're studying for people who they're stronger skills than we have. But I think it's the application of the knowledge and giving them the tools and skills. So you're right, you don't have to be a math instructor to do it, but you do, as far as understanding the resources that are out there. And that's why on that first page, we really tried to connect people to community resources. We tried to pull out the vocabulary. We tried to connect you to sites so that you could do some of the background knowledge, or for yourself, or better prepare you for the lesson that you're about to teach. So yeah, it definitely has changed the way we approach it. Lots of it is common sense. It's just, you know, and some of it is actually been really informative how much we don't know about the services that our learners can access, you know. And our goal really isn't to take the place of those services. Our goal is just to better prepare our learners to engage with those services.
But I think our instructors are finding they also have some of those expertise, like on insurance, you have to be sort of have that expertise. We've had some guest speakers come in, but the lingo is way, it's even complicated for some of us that aren't experts in those areas. So we found that that's not always the answer either.
Well, and the lingo changes. There's all kinds of acronyms. I thought language had big acronyms, so I was like, there's lots of acronyms out there. So yeah, absolutely. So one thing that we are really committed to is trying to make sure that the site does have current information. I will say it probably is a bit, well, it will be a bit unique to Calgary context, but we really have tried to make it Alberta. And certainly if there's things that you feel that we should add, please don't hesitate to let us know. Or, you know, we would also welcome you if you were doing some really great things around financial literacy or embedding numeracy within your program. You know, this is also an opportunity for you to showcase what you're doing. So, you know, within our community, we would more than happily connect other people to some of the things that are happening in Alberta, because there's great things going on. And I know the feedback from our instructors was more about this was a starting point for us, a jumping point, and now what they want to do is connect with people and organizations that are doing similar things in order to become better at it ourselves. So any other questions? I'm actually kind of proud of myself that I'm going to end somewhat early for you when I see that there's snowflakes coming down. I would, not something you see in Calgary very often. Well, you know, we've seen our fair share. What I would like to do is just, can you send us a video? Yes, so one thing that I will do, are you distributing the PowerPoint? Is that?
Yes. All the PowerPoints are currently posted on Community Learning Network's website. And if anybody doesn't have access to that, just come see me at the end and I'll get your email address so we can get the info to you.
And the session will be posted there as well because it's being recorded.
Thank you very much for your time and your attention. And certainly if you have any questions, please do not hesitate to contact me or to connect with us through the network. If you want to send us an email or send us a question, we'll certainly do our best to connect you to additional information. And if you look in your folders now, you'll find an evaluation